The silk of her emerald dress caught the chandelier light as Gwendolyn James stood at the edge of the ballroom, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone must hear it. She had spent 3 hours working up the courage for this moment, watching Warren Fletcher from across the room as he moved through conversations with practiced ease, his tall frame commanding attention without effort. Now or never, she told herself, forcing her feet to carry her toward the man who had occupied her thoughts for longer than she cared to admit. Warren saw her approaching and felt something shift in his chest. He had been tracking her movements all evening, pretending to listen to discussions about market trends and investment opportunities, while every fiber of his being remained attuned to the woman in green. He had positioned himself strategically, always keeping her in his peripheral vision, waiting for the right moment that never seemed to come. And now she was walking toward him, her dark hair cascading over bare shoulders, and he forgot entirely what his business associate had just said. "Would you dance with me?" Gwendolyn asked, her voice steadier than she expected, though her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Warren turned fully toward her, a slow smile spreading across his face that made her knees weak. "I thought you would never ask," he said, his deep voice sending warmth through her entire body. He extended his hand, and when her fingers slipped into his palm, he felt like he could finally breathe again after hours of suffocating small talk. The ballroom floor opened before them as Warren led her into the center, one hand settling at the small of her back, while the other cradled her hand with surprising gentleness for someone so imposing. The orchestra began a waltz, and they moved together as if they had danced 1,000 times before. "I have been watching you all night," Warren admitted, his gray eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made her forget the hundreds of other people in the room. "I know," Gwendolyn replied, a hint of mischief playing at her lips. "I was watching you watching me." He laughed then, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "Then why did it take you so long to come over?" "Because you are Warren Fletcher," she said simply. "Everyone in this city knows who you are. The real estate mogul who turned his father's failing construction company into a billion-dollar empire before he turned 30. I am just a curator at the Metropolitan Museum trying not to spill champagne on my borrowed dress." Warren pulled her closer, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization. "That dress is borrowed from my roommate. I do not exactly attend events like this regularly." "Neither do I if I can help it," Warren confessed. "But my sister Diane insisted I needed to show my face at this charity gala. Something about maintaining relationships and not becoming a complete recluse." Gwendolyn tilted her head, studying him with those intelligent hazel eyes that had captivated him from the moment he arrived. "You do not strike me as the reclusive type. You have been surrounded by people all evening." "Surrounded, yes. Engaged, no." He spun her gracefully, and when she came back to him, he found himself saying things he normally kept locked away. Most conversations at these events follow the same script. Everyone wants something, whether they admit it or not. But you spent the entire evening looking at the architecture and the art on the walls instead of networking. "That is because the architecture is stunning," Gwendolyn said, genuine enthusiasm lighting her features. "This mansion was built in 1889 by Thomas Whitmore. The ceiling frescoes are original, and those columns are genuine Italian marble. The craftsmanship is extraordinary." Warren found himself grinning like an idiot. "Tell me more." "Really? Most people glaze over when I start talking about historical buildings." "I am not most people." And so she did, her words painting vivid pictures of artisans and architects, of a time when buildings were constructed to inspire awe and stand for centuries. Warren listened to every word, not because he cared particularly about Italian marble, but because her passion made everything she said fascinating. The way her eyes sparkled when she described the intricate moldings, the animated gestures she made even while maintaining the dance, the pure joy in her voice made him want to hear her talk about everything. The song ended, but Warren did not release her hand. "Walk with me," he asked. Gwendolyn nodded, and he guided her through the French doors onto a sprawling terrace overlooking manicured gardens. The October air carried a bite, and without hesitation, Warren shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It smelled like expensive cologne and something distinctly him, and Gwendolyn had to resist the urge to pull it tighter around herself. "How did you end up at a museum?" Warren asked, leaning against the stone balustrade, his white shirt gleaming in the moonlight. "I studied art history at Columbia," Gwendolyn explained, standing beside him. "I loved everything about it, the stories behind the pieces, the connections between different periods and cultures. After graduation, I applied everywhere and got an entry-level position at the Met. That was 4 years ago. Now I am an assistant curator for the European Paintings Department." "That sounds incredible," she laughed softly. "It sounds more glamorous than it is. The pay is terrible, the hours are long, and I spend half my time dealing with paperwork and donor relations. But when I get to stand in front of a Rembrandt or help put together an exhibition that makes someone see art differently, it makes everything worth it." Warren turned to face her fully. "I understand that more than you might think. Everyone assumes I got into real estate for the money, and yes, the money is good. But what I really love is taking something broken or forgotten and making it whole again. Last year, we renovated the old West Side Theater District. Everyone said those buildings were too far gone, that we should just tear them down and start fresh. But we saved them, restored the original facades, and now they house affordable apartments and small businesses. That is what gets me up in the morning." Gwendolyn studied him with new appreciation. "That is not what the tabloids say about you." "What do the tabloids say?" Warren asked, though something in his tone suggested he already knew. "That you are ruthless. That you buy properties, flip them for enormous profits, and move on without looking back. That you date models and actresses and never call them again." Warren sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "The ruthless part has some truth to it. You do not build a successful company by being nice all the time. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions. As for the dating rumors..." He met her eyes. "I have been on dates. I have had relationships that did not work out, but the media makes it sound like I am going through women like business deals, and that is not true. I have been single for over a year because I have not met anyone who..." He trailed off. "Who what?" Gwendolyn prompted softly. "Who made me want to spend 3 hours at a charity gala I did not want to attend just for the chance that she might talk to me." The air between them crackled with electricity. Gwendolyn felt her pulse racing. "You did not even know I would be here tonight." "I did not. I saw you across the room the moment I arrived and forgot why I came." Warren took a step closer. "Is that completely insane?" "Probably," Gwendolyn admitted, but she was smiling. "I spent those same 3 hours trying to convince myself to approach you. What finally made you do it?" She considered the question carefully. "I realized that I would regret it forever if I did not. I have spent so much of my life being careful, being practical. I chose a career that barely pays my rent because I love it, but I have been cautious in every other aspect of my life. Then I saw you standing there, and something in me just said that I had to take this chance." Warren closed the remaining distance between them, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "I am very glad you did." "Warren, I need to be honest about something," Gwendolyn said, even as she leaned into his touch. I do not know how to navigate your world, the wealth, the publicity, the expectations. I am not sure I would be any good at it. Then do not navigate it, Warren said simply. Just be you. That is all I want. You do not even know me. Then let me, he said. Have dinner with me tomorrow and the day after that, and every day until I know everything about you. Gwendolyn wanted to say yes more than she had wanted anything in recent memory, but caution held her back. This is moving very fast. It is, Warren agreed. We can slow down if you want, but I am 40 years old, Gwendolyn. I have been on enough first dates to know when something is different. This is different. You are different. I am 26, she found herself saying. Is that too young? Warren shook his head. You are an accomplished professional with your own career and passions. Age is just a number. What matters is whether we connect, and I think we both know we do. Before Gwendolyn could respond, the French doors burst open and a woman in a striking red dress emerged, her features sharp with concern. Warren, there you are. Marcus has been looking everywhere for you. There is some issue with the downtown property that needs your immediate attention. Warren barely glanced at the interruption. Tell Marcus it can wait until Monday. The woman blinked in surprise, but he said it was urgent. Everything is urgent to Marcus. It can wait. Warren turned back to Gwendolyn, dismissing the woman entirely. After a moment of stunned silence, she retreated back inside. Was that rude? Warren asked. Probably, Gwendolyn said, fighting back a laugh, but I appreciated it. I am not leaving until you give me your number, Warren declared. I will stand on this terrace all night if necessary. Gwendolyn pulled out her phone and Warren did the same. They exchanged numbers, and the moment his phone buzzed with her contact information, he felt a ridiculous surge of triumph. Dinner tomorrow, he said. 7 o'clock. I will pick you up. I have not said yes yet, Gwendolyn pointed out, but she was smiling. You will, Warren said with confidence that should have been off-putting but somehow was not, because you feel this too, whatever this is. He was right, of course. Gwendolyn did feel it a pull toward this man that defied logic and common sense. Okay, she said softly. Dinner tomorrow. The smile that broke across Warren's face was worth every ounce of fear churning in her stomach. He took her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, his lips warm against her skin. I will text you my address, and you can send me yours. I live in a 5th-floor walk-up in Queens with 2 roommates, Gwendolyn warned him. It is not fancy. I do not care if you live in a cardboard box, Warren said. As long as I get to see you again. They returned to the ballroom, and Warren insisted on one more dance before the evening ended. This time, they moved even closer together, speaking in low voices about everything and nothing. Gwendolyn learned that Warren had a younger sister who ran a nonprofit for homeless youth, that his mother had passed away when he was in college, and that his father had remarried a woman Warren described as perfectly nice but not mom. Warren learned that Gwendolyn had grown up in Vermont, that her parents still ran the small bookstore where she had spent her childhood, and that she had a younger brother studying environmental science in California. When the gala finally wound down, Warren walked Gwendolyn to where the valet was retrieving cars. She insisted on taking a rideshare home, refusing his offer of a private car, and Warren respected her independence, even as he wanted to make sure she got home safely. Text me when you get home, he said, his hand lingering on her arm. I will, Gwendolyn promised. She stood on her toes and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek before slipping into the waiting car. Warren stood on the curb, watching until the taillights disappeared, feeling like a lovesick teenager. True to her word, Gwendolyn texted him 40 minutes later to let him know she was home safely. They ended up messaging back and forth until nearly 3 in the morning, unable to say goodnight. When Gwendolyn finally fell asleep with her phone still in her hand, she dreamed of gray eyes and strong hands and the possibility of something extraordinary. Warren picked her up at exactly 7 the next evening, driving himself in a sleek black sedan that was expensive but not ostentatious. He showed up at her door in dark jeans and a navy sweater, looking impossibly handsome and less formal than the night before. Gwendolyn had agonized over what to wear, finally settling on a simple burgundy dress that her roommate Clara insisted looked perfect. "You look beautiful," Warren said when she opened the door, his eyes traveling over her with undisguised appreciation. "Thank you. You look pretty good yourself." Gwendolyn grabbed her purse and jacket, calling goodbye to her roommates, who she knew were watching from the living room with intense curiosity. Warren had made reservations at a cozy Italian restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place that did not advertise and relied entirely on word of mouth. The owner greeted Warren warmly, which made Gwendolyn wonder how often he came here, but she pushed the thought aside. They were seated at an intimate corner table, and the conversation flowed as easily as it had the night before. Over plates of fresh pasta and glasses of wine, they peeled back more layers. Warren told her about his early struggles taking over his father's company, the nights he slept in his office because he could not afford to miss a single opportunity. Gwendolyn shared stories about her first disastrous weeks at the museum, when she had accidentally mixed up the dates for a major exhibition and nearly caused a diplomatic incident with a foreign government. "I cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes, she admitted, laughing at the memory now. "I was convinced they would fire me, but my supervisor, Margaret, told me that everyone makes mistakes and that the real test was how you fix them. I worked around the clock for 3 days straight and managed to get everything back on schedule. Margaret still brings it up whenever I am having a rough day." "She sounds like a good boss," Warren observed. "The best. She is the reason I am still there. The museum world can be very cutthroat, but Margaret has always believed in me." Gwendolyn took a sip of wine. "Tell me about your sister." "You mentioned her last night." Warren's expression softened. "Deanne is incredible. She is 5 years younger than me, and while I was busy building the company, she was volunteering at shelters and community centers. 3 years ago, she started her own organization that provides housing assistance and job training for homeless young adults. I am on the board and help with funding, but it is all her vision and passion. That must make you proud. More than I can express. Our mother used to volunteer at a soup kitchen every weekend, and Deanne inherited that giving spirit. I got the business sense from our dad, but Deanne got the heart from Mom." Warren paused, his fingers playing with the stem of his wine glass. "I think Mom would be happy with how we both turned out." Gwendolyn reached across the table and squeezed his hand. The gesture was instinctive, offering comfort, but the moment their skin touched, that electric connection sparked again. Warren turned his hand over, lacing their fingers together, and they stayed that way through dessert. After dinner, Warren suggested a walk through Washington Square Park. The autumn evening was crisp but not cold, and the park hummed with the energy of street performers, students and couples enjoying the night. They walked slowly, hands still linked, talking about their favorite books and movies and places they wanted to travel. "I have always wanted to see the Uffizi Gallery in Florence," Gwendolyn said wistfully. "The concentration of Renaissance masterpieces there is unparalleled. Botticelli's Birth of Venus, Caravaggio's Medusa. I have studied them in textbooks and online, but to see them in person would be transcendent." "We should go," Warren said casually. Gwendolyn stopped walking. "To Florence? Why not? I have a week clear in December. We could spend it in Italy." "Warren, We have known each other for exactly 24 hours. He turned to face her, his expression serious. I know. And if that is too fast, tell me and I will back off. But I do not want to waste time pretending I feel less than I do. I want to spend time with you, Gwendolyn. As much time as you will give me. If that means coffee dates for the next 6 months while we get to know each other at a traditional pace, fine. But if you are willing to jump in with both feet, I am ready to do that too. Gwendolyn searched his face, looking for any sign of insincerity or the smooth charm of a man who said these things to every woman. But all she saw was earnest hope and vulnerability that seemed at odds with his powerful reputation. This is crazy, she whispered. Completely, Warren agreed. So what do you say? I say that I am terrified but also more excited than I have been in years. Gwendolyn took a deep breath. Let us see where this goes, one day at a time. Warren pulled her close and kissed her, gentle at first and then deeper when she responded with equal passion. Standing in the middle of Washington Square Park with an arch framing the city lights behind them, they kissed like they had been waiting their whole lives for this moment. And perhaps they had. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of discovery and growing affection. Warren took Gwendolyn to a private showing at a gallery opening where she got to meet artists whose work she admired. Gwendolyn introduced Warren to her favorite hole-in-the-wall restaurants and the secret spots in the museum that tourists never found. They had coffee dates in the morning before work, lunch meetings when their schedules allowed, and dinners that stretched late into the night because neither wanted the evening to end. Warren learned that Gwendolyn was terrible at video games but fiercely competitive at board games, that she sang off-key in the shower, and that she cried at commercials featuring animals. Gwendolyn discovered that Warren was meticulous about his morning routine, that he had a secret sweet tooth that rivaled a teenager's, and that, beneath the business mogul exterior, was a man who still called his father every Sunday and remembered the birthdays of everyone in his office. They also learned to navigate the complications of their different worlds. The first time paparazzi caught them leaving a restaurant together, Gwendolyn was horrified to see speculation about her identity splashed across gossip websites. Warren immediately called his publicist and made it clear that Gwendolyn was off limits. When she expressed concern about the attention, he sat her down and explained the reality of dating someone in the public eye. It will not be constant, he assured her. Most of the time we can live our lives normally, but occasionally there will be a tension. I can do everything in my power to minimize it, but I cannot make it disappear completely. If that is a deal breaker, I understand. Gwendolyn thought about it seriously before responding. It is not a deal breaker, but I need you to respect when I need privacy or when I do not want to attend certain events. Always, Warren promised. Your comfort comes first. Meeting each other's families was the next big step. Gwendolyn's parents drove down from Vermont for a weekend, and Warren was uncharacteristically nervous about making a good impression. He showed up at her apartment with flowers for her mother, and a first-edition book on conservation for her environmentalist father, a detail Gwendolyn had mentioned weeks earlier. Her parents were naturally skeptical of the wealthy businessman dating their daughter, but Warren won them over with his genuine interest in their bookstore and his obvious devotion to Gwendolyn. He is a good man, her mother told her privately while they washed dishes after dinner. I can see how he looks at you, like you are the most precious thing in the world. Meeting Deanne was less nerve-wracking because Warren assured Gwendolyn that his sister would love her. He was right. Deanne invited them over for brunch at her apartment, and within 30 minutes, she and Gwendolyn were deep in conversation about art programs for the youth in Deanne's organization. By the end of the meal, Diane was hugging Gwendolyn and whispering loudly enough for Warren to hear. Please keep him. He has never been this happy. 2 months into their relationship, Warren had to travel to San Francisco for a major property acquisition that required his personal attention. He would be gone for a week, and neither of them handled the separation well. They video called every night, sometimes just leaving the connection open while they went about their evening routines, needing the feeling of proximity even across 3,000 miles. On the 5th night, Warren looked exhausted, his tie loosened, and his normally perfect hair disheveled. "These negotiations are brutal," he admitted. "The other party keeps changing terms, and I am starting to think they are just wasting my time." "Can you walk away?" Gwendolyn asked, curled up on her bed with her laptop. "Technically, yes, but this property is perfect for a mixed-use development I have been planning for years. Affordable housing, retail space for local businesses, and a community center. It would be a huge loss to abandon it." "Then do not abandon it. You are Warren Fletcher. You do not back down from challenges." She smiled at him through the screen. "Show them why you are the best at what you do." Warren stared at her for a long moment. "I love you," he said suddenly. "I know it is fast, and maybe I should wait to say it in person, but I love you, Gwendolyn. You make everything better." Gwendolyn felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too. Come home soon. 2 more days, and then I am not letting you out of my sight for at least a week." When Warren returned to New York, he went straight from the airport to the museum where Gwendolyn was working late on a new exhibition. He found her in one of the storage rooms, carefully examining a painting under specialized lighting. She looked up when he entered, and her face transformed with joy. "You are early," she exclaimed, setting down her tools and running into his arms. Warren caught her, lifting her off her feet and burying his face in her hair. "I took an earlier flight. I missed you too much." They held each other for a long time, and when they finally pulled apart, Warren kept his arms around her waist. "The deal went through. We signed this morning." "That is wonderful." Gwendolyn kissed him, tasting coffee and relief and happiness. "I want to show you something," Warren said. "Are you done here?" Gwendolyn glanced at the painting behind her. "I should really finish this assessment. Please, it is important." Something in his voice made her agree. She locked up the storage room and followed Warren out to his car. He drove them downtown to a neighborhood that was clearly in transition, with old buildings standing next to construction sites and empty lots waiting for development. "This is it," Warren said, parking in front of a large property surrounded by fencing. "This is the San Francisco acquisition. Well, the New York equivalent. I bought this 6 months ago." They got out of the car, and Warren unlocked the gate, leading her into what appeared to be an old warehouse complex. The buildings were clearly abandoned but structurally sound, with beautiful brick facades and original ironwork details. "What are you going to do with it?" Gwendolyn asked, her curator's eye already seeing the potential. 200 units of affordable housing," Warren explained, his passion evident. "Retail space on the ground floors with subsidized rent for local entrepreneurs. A community center with classrooms and meeting spaces. And here." He led her to the largest building, pulling open a heavy door to reveal a vast, empty interior with soaring ceilings and enormous windows. "I want this to be a community arts center. Exhibition space, classrooms for art programs, studios for local artists. I was hoping you might consult on the design." Gwendolyn turned to him, stunned. "Warren, I do not know anything about designing arts centers. You know about art and what artists need. You know how to display work so that it moves people. That is exactly what this space needs." He took her hands. "I am not asking you to leave the museum or take this on alone. I will hire professional designers and architects, but I want your input. I want your vision to be part of this." She looked around the enormous space, already imagining what it could become. This could be incredible. It will be, especially with your help. They spent the next hour walking through the property, with Warren explaining his plans and Gwendolyn offering suggestions about sight lines and natural lighting and accessibility. By the time they left, she was buzzing with excitement about the project. Over dinner that night at Warren's penthouse apartment, the first time Gwendolyn had been there, and she had tried not to gawk at the stunning views and sleek furnishings. They talked about the future in more concrete terms than they ever had before. "I need to be honest about what my life looks like," Warren said seriously. "The business requires a lot of my time and attention. There will be trips I have to take, events I need to attend, and late nights at the office. I can promise to always make time for you and to never let work completely consume me, but I cannot pretend it will be easy." Gwendolyn nodded. "I appreciate your honesty, and my career has its own demands. Exhibition deadlines, donor events, research that cannot be rushed. We will both have to be flexible and understanding." "Can we make this work?" Warren asked, vulnerability showing in his eyes. "I think we can," Gwendolyn said, "as long as we keep talking to each other and do not let small problems become big ones." Warren stood and pulled her to her feet, leading her to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering cityscape. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights of New York stretch out before them. "Move in with me," Warren said quietly. Gwendolyn tensed slightly. "Warren, I know what you are going to say. Too fast, too soon, we should wait. But I hate going to sleep without you. I hate waking up and knowing you are across the city instead of beside me. This apartment is too big for one person anyway. You could have your own space, a whole room for your books and research. No pressure, no rush. Just think about it." Gwendolyn turned in his arms to face him. "My lease is not up for another 4 months. We can pay the early termination fee. Or keep it and you can transition gradually. Whatever makes you comfortable. My roommates would probably appreciate the heads up before I abandon them." Warren's heart started beating faster. "Does that mean you are considering it?" "I am considering it," Gwendolyn confirmed. "But I need a little time. This is a big step." "Take all the time you need," Warren said, kissing her forehead. "Just know that I am ready whenever you are." 3 weeks later, Gwendolyn moved into Warren's penthouse with 2 suitcases of clothes and 12 boxes of books. Her roommates threw her a going-away party that turned into a happy chaos of wine and laughter, and promises to have regular dinners together. Warren made himself scarce during the actual move, giving her space to say goodbye to that chapter of her life. But he was waiting when she arrived at his apartment, their apartment now with champagne, and takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. "Welcome home," he said. And Gwendolyn realized with a jolt that this truly felt like home in a way her shared apartment never had. They fell into a rhythm of domesticity that felt natural, despite their relatively short time together. Warren learned to work around Gwendolyn's habit of leaving coffee mugs on every available surface, and Gwendolyn adapted to Warren's need for the kitchen to be immaculately clean before bed. They discovered they both loved cooking together, though Warren was definitely the better chef, and that Sunday mornings were sacred time for sleeping in and lazy breakfast in bed. The Community Arts Center project moved forward, and Gwendolyn found herself increasingly involved. She worked with the architects to design the exhibition spaces, consulted with art teachers about the classroom needs, and helped Warren interview directors for the program. Seeing this side of his work, the tangible good his resources could do, made her fall even deeper in love with him. 6 months into living together, Warren surprised her with a trip to Florence. He had been planning it for weeks, coordinating with her supervisor to ensure she could take the time off, booking a boutique hotel near the Uffizi Gallery, and arranging private tours of sites he knew she had always wanted to see. Gwendolyn cried when he presented her with the plane tickets over breakfast one morning. "I cannot believe you remembered," she said, wiping at her eyes. "I remember everything you tell me," Warren said simply. "You said seeing the Uffizi was a dream. I wanted to make that dream come true." Florence was magical. They wandered through ancient streets, ate ridiculous amounts of gelato, and spent hours in the Uffizi Gallery where Gwendolyn provided running commentary about every painting while Warren watched her with undisguised adoration. On their last night, he took her to a small restaurant on a hilltop overlooking the city, the kind of place that locals guarded jealously and tourists never found. After dinner, as they stood on the terrace watching the sun set over the Tuscan landscape, Warren got down on one knee. "Gwendolyn James, I have been carrying this ring around for 3 days waiting for the perfect moment, and I finally realized that every moment with you is perfect." He opened a small velvet box to reveal a stunning vintage ring with an emerald surrounded by diamonds. "I love you more than I knew it was possible to love another person. You have made my life fuller and richer and more meaningful than I ever imagined it could be. Will you marry me?" Gwendolyn was crying again, happy tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she managed to say. "Yes, absolutely yes." Warren slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly. He stood and kissed her as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of gold and rose, and Gwendolyn thought her heart might burst from the sheer joy of this moment. They called their families from the hotel room that night, and everyone reacted with enthusiasm and excitement. Deanne screamed so loudly that Warren had to hold the phone away from his ear, and Gwendolyn's mother cried happy tears that matched her daughter's. They spent the rest of their time in Florence existing in a bubble of engagement bliss, planning a future that felt limitless with possibility. Back in New York, they dove into wedding planning with the same energy they brought to everything else. Gwendolyn had no interest in a huge society wedding, despite Warren's position, and he was more than happy to give her whatever she wanted. They settled on an intimate ceremony at a historic estate in upstate New York, with only close family and friends in attendance. The Community Arts Center opened 2 months before their wedding, and it was everything Warren had envisioned and more. The opening night, gala featured work from local artists, performances by youth groups from Diane's organization, and a speech from Gwendolyn about the importance of accessible art education that received a standing ovation. Warren watched from the audience, so proud he thought he might explode, and afterward he told her she should consider teaching or public speaking because she was a natural. "I am perfectly happy as a curator," Gwendolyn said, but she was pleased by the compliment. Their wedding day arrived in a blur of autumn colors and crisp air. Gwendolyn wore a simple silk gown that made her look like she had stepped out of a classic painting, and Warren wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo that made him look impossibly handsome. They exchanged vows they had written themselves in front of 80 guests, promising to support each other's dreams, to communicate even when it was hard, and to never stop dancing together. The reception was held in a grand ballroom that reminded Gwendolyn of the night they met. When it came time for their first dance as husband and wife, Warren took her hand with that same gentle strength and pulled her close. "Remember when you asked me to dance?" he murmured as they swayed to the music. "I remember being terrified you would say no," Gwendolyn admitted. "I had been waiting all night for you to ask. I think I had been waiting my whole life for you to walk into it." "That is incredibly sappy, Mr. Fletcher." "You married me anyway, Mrs. Fletcher." Gwendolyn smiled against his chest. Best decision I ever made." They danced surrounded by the people they loved most, celebrating the beginning of their marriage and everything they would build together. And as the music swelled and Warren spun her across the floor, Gwendolyn thought about that night over a year ago when she had gathered her courage and asked a stranger to dance. Such a small action, such an enormous consequence. 3 years later, Gwendolyn stood in the nursery of their penthouse, now redecorated to accommodate the baby girl sleeping peacefully in her crib. Warren wrapped his arms around his wife from behind, both of them watching their daughter with the wonder of new parents who still could not quite believe this tiny human was theirs. "She has your eyes," Warren whispered. "She has your stubborn chin," Gwendolyn countered, but she was smiling. Life had continued to unfold in beautiful and unexpected ways. Gwendolyn had been promoted to senior curator and was leading a major Renaissance exhibition that would tour internationally. Warren had expanded his mission-driven real estate projects, with 3 more community arts centers in development across the country. Diane had become the baby's devoted aunt, showing up with ridiculous gifts and fierce determination to be the favorite relative. They had navigated challenges to a difficult pregnancy that had scared them both, a major business deal that fell through and left Warren frustrated for weeks, family drama and work stress, and all the normal complications of life. But they had weathered everything together, staying true to their promise to communicate and support each other. "You ever think about that night?" Gwendolyn asked softly, still watching their daughter sleep. "The gala where we met, all the time," Warren admitted. "I think about how close we came to never meeting, if Deanne had not insisted I attend, if you had not gathered the courage to ask me to dance, if I had left early like I wanted to. But we did meet. I did ask you to dance, and you had been waiting for me." Warren turned her to face him, his gray eyes as intense as they had been that first night. "I would wait 1,000 lifetimes for you." Still incredibly sappy, Gwendolyn teased, but her own eyes were bright with emotion. "And you still love it." She did. She loved everything about the life they had built together, the family they were creating, the future stretching out before them full of possibility. That single question, "Would you dance with me?" had changed the trajectory of both their lives, leading them to this moment of perfect contentment. The baby stirred in her crib, making small sounds that would soon escalate to demands for attention. Warren and Gwendolyn moved as a team, the choreography of new parenthood still being learned but already becoming natural. As Warren lifted their daughter and Gwendolyn retrieved a bottle, they exchanged a look of profound understanding and love. This was their dance, now messier and more complicated than a waltz in a ballroom, but infinitely more meaningful. And they would keep dancing together through whatever life brought them, partners in every sense of the word, bound by a love that had started with a question and grown into something extraordinary. Years would continue to pass, bringing more children, career triumphs and setbacks, aging parents to care for and teenagers to raise, anniversaries to celebrate and ordinary days to cherish. Through it all, they would remain fundamentally those same 2 people who had found each other across a crowded ballroom and recognized something worth pursuing. And sometimes, when life got particularly chaotic or stressful, Warren would pull Gwendolyn into his arms in their living room and dance with her without music, both of them closing their eyes and remembering that perfect first waltz. Their children would watch and roll their eyes at their parents' romanticism, not yet understanding how rare and precious it was to find someone who made you want to dance for the rest of your life. But Gwendolyn and Warren knew. They knew exactly how lucky they were, how easily they could have missed each other, how one moment of courage had led to a lifetime of love. and they never took a single day of it for granted.